Wow. So, a lot happened in the final episode of The Last of Us. We finally get to witness the birth of Ellie from Ellie, which just raises more questions than anything. Never let your pediatrician get between you and your kid. Being kind to a giraffe wins over the audience way more than a dog. And at the end of the day, I was still left with one question. What are they going to feed and inject into the actress who has to play Abby to get her to look like this? Hello everyone, my name is Mr.LetsGame, and this is The Last of Us Episode 9. What was different in the games versus the shows? You know how it is. I mean, you clicked on the video. You know what it's about. The series has had its ups and downs, to be completely honest. I mean, it's really been kind of mid so far, to be completely honest. This episode was actually pretty good. It actually followed the game story pretty closely, with some slight deviations here and there. Anyways, if you're into The Last of Us, or if you're into this sort of content, I have a 3.5 hour long review on The Last of Us Part 2. So if you're into that sort of thing, go ahead and check it out. Also, one more thing before I start the review. I poke fun a lot at the series The Last of Us, especially Part 2, because it was so divisive. But that's all it is poking fun. I mean, yeah, it was a part of an overall trend of wokeness that seems to be sweeping entertainment as of late, but that's no excuse for violence. If your first reaction to a piece of media that you don't like is, oh, you know what? I think I'm just gonna send a couple of death threats their way, then you are a fucking idiot. I don't get why a lot of creators don't just outright say that, especially in the political sphere, just saying. Anyways, with all that out of the way, let's get right into this. So the scene starts off with this woman running through the woods and into this abandoned house. She frantically searches the place, runs upstairs, and puts a chair in between the door to do an old-fashioned lock, I guess. I try to do this sometimes, but it never really ends up working. I always find the chair is too small, or the doorknob just isn't made for it. She's about to give birth when this infected runs into the room. She manages to kill it, and I guess the infected kind of acted as a really shitty midwife. I mean, it was like really pushing to get that thing out of there. Anyways, she names the baby Ellie and cradles it in her arms, also noticing that she's been bitten by the infected. It turns out that this is actually Anna, who is Ellie's mom in the video game. Also, I thought it was kind of interesting that Anna was giving birth because they actually had, back in the day, I believe it was in one of the Uncharted games, because Naughty Dog always kind of puts like subtle teasers for their next game in the current game that they release. And there was a poster of a woman with a mask and a gun who was pregnant. And fans theorized that this was either going to be a separate anthology series or it was going to be Ellie's backstory. Or I guess Ellie's mom's backstory. Which actually would have been pretty cool, to be completely honest. I think that would have been a very interesting game to have pursued. Although I'm not exactly how interesting it would have been, because, I mean, you know, your character would essentially have to get like, you know, slower and slower and, you know, complain about their feet all the time and, you know, have to sit down and, you know, whatever, and have, you know, mood swings and cravings and stuff like that. So I don't know how that would translate well into actual gameplay, but I think it would have been cool to explore regardless. Man, I'm not gonna lie, this scene was actually hard to get through. I don't know what it is with babies, but oh man, like babies in like film and TV, and when they're crying, it's like, oh my god, it's just so heartbreaking for me. And then not only that, but like that is a real baby. Like, how the heck did they get a baby that young on the set? While this is a good shot, and it was a very emotional part of the film, probably even better than the video game if I'm being completely honest. Like, this scene should have been in the video game, but I just don't think children that young should be in movies. Just my personal opinion, they can't consent to that sort of thing. And the parents that allow that, I don't know, it might be a little suspect. Just personal opinion. Anyways, nightfall happens and Marlene makes it to the abandoned house and goes upstairs to see her friend Anna holding the baby. A key detail here is that she was ready to Marvel's Avengers Endgame herself in case it wasn't Marlene that came in the door, which is just so heartbreaking. Like, oh my god. Man, like it would have been even more heartbreaking if she was holding the knife to to Ellie. Like, that would have been, oh my god. Like, I don't think my heart could have taken that, to be honest. Anyways, she relays to her friend Marlene that the baby is not infected, which it probably was, but she lies to her friend Marlene and asks her to take the baby to the Boston QZ and give her a life. And she even gives Ellie her switchblade. Anna also asks Marlene that after she takes Ellie, if she would please do her the favor and kill her. She reluctantly gives the baby to one of her colleagues without even saying goodbye, just walks in and caps her, which I mean, I guess would probably be the best course of action.
Cover her ears.
You had one, Joe. Just the one.
Anyways, it snaps back to reality, and Ellie's just kind of dozing off while Joel is calling her. And she eventually responds, and, they kind of strike up a conversation. He introduces her to Boggle, which is like a very early 2000s type game. Like, if you grew up in the early 2000s and you were in a classroom, like, there was a high probability that the teacher had this, and they would always be like, oh, go on. Play Boggle instead of playing on your video games. But nowadays, kids, they can just pull out their phones. They don't, doesn't really matter. You don't have to be forced to play this crap now. Which, I mean, it's an alright game, if you like learning. So we actually finally do get a boosting section, which is actually a very big part in the video game. And a lot of people are like, oh, this is boring. It just kind of hides load times and stuff like that. And you would be accurate, it does hide load times, but I always enjoyed these moments because it was a nice way to kind of show that these characters can work together. They would boost one of them up and then, they would throw something down. I don't know. I just liked the whole teamwork sort of aspect. And then you could actually have some interesting moments like in the video game where after you've seen this happen a million times, you expect Ellie to put down the ladder like she always does, but she literally throws it down there and runs away because she's excited. While in the movie, she just kind of drops the ladder and almost fucking falls on Joel's head. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, that's kind of like really fucking inconsiderate and dangerous. Like, if he wasn't paying closer attention, he could have fucking died from that. Anyways, he finally sees what that kid was up to, and she found a giraffe that was eating some leaves that was growing on the side of this building. And they both share a scene where they just kind of pet it and feed it, just like they did in the video game. They even watch, just like they did in the video game, as a herd of giraffes walk through this park. And Joel kind of subtly asks Ellie if she really actually wants to go through with this. And she is 100% dead set on finishing this to the end, sharing her sentiment in the video game that it can't all be for nothing. The people that have died so far cannot be for nothing, and that she'll do whatever Joel wants her to do after they get back. Anyways, there's a lot of exposition in this next part. Basically, it follows how the video game did, where Joel is kind of leading Ellie around the city in search of the hospital. And for once, the dialogue is actually a little bit even on this, I would say. I mean, highlights of the video game, you had Ellie telling Joel that she had a dream about being in an airplane that was crashing, even though that she's never been in an airplane before. And of course, also, little scraps of paper here and there telling a little side story about what happened there. But in the game, it actually is a little bit different here. Joel actually gives some backstory to the scar that was on his head that was mentioned a couple episodes back. And it wasn't because some guy shot at him and he shot back and missed. Well, let's just say he tried to endgame himself like Black Widow did, but he flinched, and that's how he got the scar. They both admit it was a good thing that he survived that encounter, which I think that's like a very heartwarming thing right there. Like, that was a pretty good addition. I would say that's a pretty appropriate reaction to Joel's situation. And they even lighten the mood after that by reading some puns. But just then, an enemy squad rolls up on them and flashbangs their ass and snatches Ellie up while knocking Joel out. Anyways, so Joel wakes up in a hospital bed, and it turns out that the Fireflies have safely transported him into the heart of the hospital that they have been trying to get to this entire series. And Marlene just happens to be there when he wakes up, saying that they've come a very far way and that she has lost many people trying to get to where she is right now. Joel says that it's all her, that she fought like hell to get here. But Marlene assures him that Ellie would have been dead day one if she had to go by herself. Which, I mean, it's actually good to acknowledge that every once in a while, you know what I mean? Like, just acknowledge how badass the characters are in the series. I always hate it when the villains are like, oh, hardy har har, I'm going to put you in this precarious situation and you're probably going to die, but I'm going to leave and just assume it all went to plan. And then you come back to them later and they're like, oh, well, that didn't work. I guess I'm fucked. But oh, wait, here's another trap for you to get out of. And then you do that like 5 or 6 more times. And then they have a big boss battle, and then they're surprised that they lost, and it's like, well, yeah, of course, like, they survived, like, everything else. Like, I actually kind of wish that this part was in the game, where they actually kind of acknowledge, like, yeah, you've kind of been a badass this entire game. Anyways, Joel demands to see Ellie, but Marlene says that they can't, and that she's being prepped for surgery. She then says that the remaining doctors that are at the facility, through a bunch of scientific mumbo-jumbo, are going to essentially extract the cordyceps that are inside of her brain and reverse engineer a vaccine from that. Joel, knowing that this will kill her, obviously does not want this to happen, but Marlene is not giving him a choice in the matter. I will say, I do kind of tip my hat to them, because they did actually have an opportunity right here for them to actually completely be revisionist filth and say that the doctor was 100% sure that there would be a vaccine if only they killed Ellie. She specifically says he thinks it may be a vaccine. So just like in the video game, it was not a surefire thing. And as a matter of fact, there were plenty of clues sprinkled throughout the game to show that the Fireflies were not necessarily the best organization, whether it be helping resistance groups to overthrow Fedra and then not protecting those groups and letting them fall into tyranny, or just showing that their scientists were complete and utter buffoons who fucked around and got monkeypox. Anyways, she tells her men to escort him out, but on the way down, he of course resists and ends up putting a bullet in both of their heads. I don't know, I think the game kind of handled this a little bit better. I mean, in the game, this really showed that Joel was extremely desperate and just did not give a fuck at this point. I mean, he literally shoots a dude in the balls twice. I mean, not really, it's more of the lower stomach area. But still, I just wish he kind of would have shot this dude a little bit more, yelling for him to give up the location of Ellie. Anyways, Joel goes on a fucking warpath. I mean, I'm talking about some John Wick shit here, alright? I'm talking about a John Woo film, you know what I mean? Like, oh man, it was actually a pretty good scene. If every episode, or at least every other episode, had a gun battle like this, or a chaotic clicker battle like this, I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more, to be completely honest. I mean, because that's something that's kind of overlooked in the series here, is that the whole reason why the game was so brutal was because Joel and Ellie were killing so many people just to get through the day. I mean, they would just mow down waves and waves of people, and I get it, it's not necessarily realistic, but still, there's not like any action in the series. I mean, it was just kind of weird. I mean, for me, I kind of always played Joel as a Panther type play style, you know? Like, you pop out of the shadows, kill as many as you can, and then slink back in, attack from a different angle type shit. It is truly the easiest way to get through grounded difficulty. Also, just a little side note here. The final mission was actually a little easier than I thought it would be on grounded difficulty. But yeah, I just really missed that sort of grittiness of the gameplay. I mean, it's nowhere in the whole series. I really would have liked to have seen, Joel sneak up behind someone, grab a dude hostage, ask for information, and then cap both of the dudes. I don't know. I mean, I'll put some gameplay up here to show like how brutal and dynamic the gameplay is. And I gotta admit, like part 2, as much as I shit on that game, like the combat is probably some of the funnest I've ever had. Which is why I say that if they had a Factions multiplayer expansion, I think that would actually be amazing. I mean, the survival and crafting systems literally go hand in hand with a sort of escape from Tarkov type mode, or even a battle royale genre type mode. And yeah, I know, as some people, they just don't like the battle royale type thing, or they don't like the Tarkov type thing. I get it. You could still have traditional multiplayer games, or even have like a mixture of like player versus environment type shit, where you could like, I don't know, like throw like a sonic grenade at like a group of dudes off in the distance, and then that would call like a crap ton of clickers over to them. Like, that would be kind of cool, you know what I mean? I'm just saying, Naughty Dog, man. Factions, make it happen, please. I would be your first reviewer. But yeah, the gun battle only goes on for like 2 minutes, but damn, was it a good 2 minutes. Like, seriously. I wish they would have had more of this in the series. Like, seriously, like, if they ever do a part 2, which, I mean, it's obviously going to be extremely divisive, but if they do, they need to put some more action into the series, and they're gonna have to get, I guess, some female actresses who can actually do that action. Anyways, so Joel finally makes it to the operating room where Ellie is at and demands that they hand over Ellie. The head surgeon grabs a scalpel, but Joel is not even having none of that bullshit and just caps him right in the dome. And there is no way at all that he will be important for any reason whatsoever. There's no reason at all. It's not like they're going to base the entire game around this one specific death. On that note, one of the nurses here, I actually can't tell who it is, but one of the nurses here is actually the voice actress for Abby. So, fun fact. Anyways, they unhook her and hand her over to the crazy man, who takes her to the elevator and brings her down to the parking lot. I think they should have kept in the scene in the video game where Joel is just kind of running as fast as he can to the elevator with Ellie in his arms. Oh my gosh, it's like such a heartbreaking scene to listen to his dialogue. Also, check out this alternative death scene for if they actually catch you during this section. I don't know, I just thought it was kind of interesting.
No, let go of her! Let go of her!
I'm not even gonna lie, I actually literally completed this section a couple hours before, and I am still shocked that I never knew about this alternative cutscene. Anyway, so in the parking garage, he's confronted by Marlene, which their conversation goes about as well as it did in the video game.
Maybe, but it isn't for you to decide.
Or you.
Which I actually did kind of think about this a little bit after I heard Joel say this in the show. I mean, if you think about it, Fireflies are a bit fucked up. I mean, yeah, they decided to try for a cure, but they didn't give Ellie that choice. I mean, seriously, if Joel and Ellie were in the same room, they were both conscious, both well rested on sleep, And if she told them both at the same time that there was an operation where Ellie would die, but there would be a chance of a vaccine, I'm pretty sure Ellie would want to do it, and Joel would reluctantly let her do it. So just always remember that while Joel dooms humanity here, the Fireflies denied Joel and Ellie that bit of humanity, of getting to choose. At the end of the day, both of them are right. It was neither of their decisions to decide, but they were willing to kill Ellie without her consent. Like, yeah, I get it. That is a lot of pressure to put on a 14-year-old. And if they say no, things would get awkward pretty quickly. I guess it is kind of an example of one of those ultimate dilemmas. Anyways, Joel caps Marlene, rides off with Ellie. Ellie wakes up. She asks what happened, and Joel lies to her about the entire event, saying that her immunity wasn't anything special because they had found a bunch of people who were immune. And after they did all this, a bunch of raiders just happened to bust in and essentially kill everybody there. Which I guess the inclusion of the raiders is maybe a slightly better cover story than what happened. Because obviously there was no way Marlene was not going to say hi to Ellie. Like, that's probably the part that fucked up Ellie the most. Like, seriously, that she would believe that, like, Marlene wouldn't even say hi to her after everything they've been through, after the long journey that they've had. Anyways, it shows them sometime later, and their car breaks down, so they decide to do a 5-mile hike up to Jackson, where Tommy's brother and Maria are in charge, or, I guess, sit on the council.
This is the commune. We're communists.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
Anyways, right outside of Jackson, Ellie stops Joel to tell him a few things. She mentions to him Riley and what happened to her. And she actually does mention that the person that she killed was actually Riley, which that is actually a really good addition right there. Like I said 2 reviews ago, I always wanted to know what happened with Riley. Like, did she notice that they were going to turn? Did Riley cap herself while Ellie was away? Did she let her turn? Did Ellie try to, do that blood transfusion thing with Riley? Like, what did they do in those moments leading up to them turning? Anyways, Joel kind of doesn't really understand what she's trying to go for here. And he says that no matter what happens in the world, you always find something to fight for. And I don't know, just check out the scenes one right after another here. I actually really kind of like the video game version. When he mentions you find something to fight for, he actually reaches down at his broken watch that Sarah gave him.
You don't know what to do next, but if you just keep going, you find something new to fight for.
I struggled for a long time with surviving. And no matter what, you keep finding something to fight for.
Anyways, Riley then asks him straight up, is everything that he said to her about the Fireflies factual? And she failed the speech check, so she didn't get the extra XP. Okay, so yeah, I mean, that's the series right there. I mean, yeah. I really don't know what to think about it, to be completely honest, because I mean, there were some very good additions that I actually think should be in the game, to be completely honest. Like I said, I am kind of glad they didn't really go full revisionist history, because it definitely did kind of seem like they were setting up for that. Like, to make it seem like Joel was going to be 100% the bad guy for doing this. And there's still time. They probably might do it leading up to season 2, to be completely honest. Because, I mean, obviously they're going to have to take inspiration from that game. But yeah, if I was to rate this episode, I would say it's, I don't know, like a 7. I mean, I want to give it a higher ranking. I don't know. I really just can't justify giving it anything any higher than that. And I mean, don't get me wrong. That's above average. That's a pretty good ranking in general. At least it wasn't like the first episode. I gotta admit though, when I looked at this episode, I was a little bit worried when I saw that it was actually the shortest episode of the bunch. Usually for your final episode, you want to give everybody a nice meaty send-off. Why'd you phrase it like that? Okay, I'm going to get up on my soapbox here for like just a second. And if you were a player of the original Last of Us game, please let me know in the comments below what you think about this. But I actually just played through Grounded mode today, like today. And I played it through, and the surgeon here is in a green smock in a dirty ass room with other green smocked people. And I mean, I can't really tell if it's necessarily the color grading in the game or if the guy is actually, has sort of more of a darker skin tone here. But I could have sworn in the remastered version of the game, it actually had the blue smocked version of Gary in The Last of Us Part 2 for the surgeon here. I could have sworn I remembered seeing it in the remastered version, and I was like, what is this? What is this revisionist filth in my game? But I don't know. Maybe I'm just going crazy or something. But let me know in the comments below. Like, did they have the original ending, and then they patched in, like, the blue smocks, and then they patched it out when The Last of Us Part 1 came out? Or what? Like, I don't know. My mind is like absolutely racing by this right now. Okay, so some updates to the channel. Once again, trying to get the Dead Space review out here as quickly as I can. It should be a lot easier to do it now that I'm not actually dedicating so much time and energy on the Last of Us series. Because to be completely honest, it's kind of a sunken cost at this point. I mean, I think I might have even tanked my channel just doing this because, like the views on these, if you can tell, are really not very good. And I've actually been looking at a lot of other YouTubers, and their views actually aren't very well on this particular topic either. So either Sony, Naughty Dog, or HBO Max is actually deliberately suppressing these types of reviews, or what, I'm not certain. I can't say nothing. Or maybe it's just the YouTube algorithm, because I mean, I was kind of picking up some traction, I was getting like, I was getting some decent views. And then all of a sudden I started doing this and they dropped off the face of the earth. So, I don't know. I'm going to get back to my regular sort of content soon, and it'll be fun. And also, like I said, please look out for a little bit after Resident Evil 4 Remake releases, because I'm going to be doing the Resident Evil 4 Remake while also comparing it to Resident Evil Remake 2 and Resident Evil 4, the original one. So, I cannot wait for that. Like, seriously, I cannot wait. Resident Evil 4 Remake actually does look pretty good. I'm actually kind of excited for it. I know I shouldn't be excited for games nowadays. And to be completely honest, modern day video games have just beaten me down over the head so much that I just cannot trust them anymore. I cannot trust those commercials. I cannot trust those trailers, those gameplay trailers, E3 showings, whatever. You can't trust none of it anymore. None of it. But if what they show is true, then goddamn, we might actually have a good game on our hands here. As for the story, whatever. But the gameplay, if the gameplay's solid, then it's solid, alright? Because Resident Evil 2 Remake, I mean, I'm playing it through right now, and it's fun. Like, it is really fun. And Resident Evil 4 Remake just seems to take everything that's in that game, but builds on top of that, which is exactly what you would want in a sequel. Anyways, thank you all very much for sticking with me this long. If you like what I do, maybe consider subscribing to the channel, you know what I mean? Spread a little love, huh? But if not, then your view was much appreciated. Anyways, with that being said, I hope you all have a good day. Bye-bye.